First, we're going to move on now, and first of our speakers here. When we looked at the idea of having the open day in Closh to Breed, so obviously we were going to get Closh to Breed to speak, but we wanted to look and bring in a school that were really innovative, and we're doing something different. When chatting to Kevin Marshall from Microsoft, he told me the story of what was happening in Clare Galway, and he was saying, these guys have ditched the textbook. They're developing their own. And then I thought back and I said to myself, I look at the publishers out there and I say, I'd love to take their model and bring it into O2 or 3 as a company, because I wouldn't have to make the phone anymore. I wouldn't have to pay for anyone to sell the phone anymore. And I could just get someone to download it. And I could charge more. And I could use the VAT as a reason to do that. And I said, and Kevin had said to me, well, the guys in Clare Galway have come up with a different way of doing it. And we looked at the story that they put together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass on to Alan Mongey. He's going to tell you what they have done in the school. And he's going to tell you the changes that they've made and the benefits that they've brought to their students. So I'd like to hand on to Alan Mongey, Principal of Clare Galway College. Thank you. Can we change the slides?
Okay. We'll have to change the slides. I was up second.
Okay.
But look, I'm delighted to be here to, I suppose, start to tell our story. Mark asked me to speak about why we went down the route we went down, why we chose to do what we were going to do, and maybe to give some examples of exactly what we were doing. So that's the kind of the main focus of the presentation. And I'm not going to be very specific with exact examples. The teachers in the workshop afterwards are going to give those examples. But just to give an idea of what we are about in our school, this is our vision statement. We're very much a learning school, and this is something that I say to the students, to the parents at Open Nights, that we're a new school, we're only open 2 years. I have been a principal for 6 years, a principal in a previous school, but I'm very open about the fact that I'm learning on a daily basis, learning how to be a better principal. My teachers are learning on a daily basis, learning to be better teachers on a daily basis, as are the students. So I suppose that's our philosophy and approach in Clare Galway College, that we are a community of learners, everyone. The teacher isn't just the master. So we're trying to create this knowledge community in our school, and that very much informs the direction we're going in terms of our teaching approach. So John Dewey, and some of this may be a little bit theoretical, but this is someone I would have read while I was at college, and it's something that I relate to, that for me, learning should be a social process. It should be an interactive process. Students should be engaged in their own learning. They should be engaged with the students, with the teacher, with each other, interacting with each other. And I firmly believe, our teachers believe, that where students take responsibility of their own learning, they develop a deeper understanding of what they're going to cover. And you as teachers and you as principals know that where there's active engagement of the students in the classroom, in their learning, they achieve much better. And that has been our experience to date in terms of what we're doing. So it started to guide the approach we wanted to take with teaching in our school. And for me, and I have to acknowledge I borrowed this slide from someone else, it's not mine, so people in Microsoft may have seen this one before. But for me, with any educational reform, the best educational reform and the greatest success in terms of educational reform comes from the ground up and comes from the teachers actively engaging and buying into that reform. So essentially, when something is broken by an inside force, life begins. So in our school, the students and the teachers are taking ownership of what we are doing. They're the ones driving it forward, and they're the ones changing the approach to teaching. I'm going to skip this one quickly. In terms of putting our vision into practice, there's 3 areas in terms of having to look at. And Marie-Therese mentioned it earlier on in terms of speaking to policymakers, etc., and things like that. So that's the education system change that needs to happen. And sometimes that's very hard to influence. So we don't deal with that. Okay? What can I do in terms of a school leader, in terms of the culture we have created in our school, and what can we do around the innovative teaching practices within our school? Yes, we would like policy change and policy development that would make life easier for us. But sometimes to get where you're going to go, like I say, you have to push from the inside for real change to happen. So in terms of being a school leader and trying to create a culture within the school, what kind of supports do teachers need? In our school, I say to teachers, don't be afraid to try something out and fail at it. You're going to learn from that experience. The students are going to learn from that experience. They try different things out. I support them as much as possible in terms of what they're trying to implement. They're guided by the overall vision within the school. To learn and to share with their colleagues, so creating that real culture of collaboration. If we're trying to ask teachers and students to collaborate in their own learning, teachers also need to collaborate in a better way in staff rooms. I'm a previous school inspector. I would have gone in on whole school evaluations, subject inspections, all of that. And in terms of the best practice I would have observed is where teachers talk about their own learning and what they're teaching with students in their subject department meetings, not focusing on what textbooks will we buy next year, what resources, what's our budget, etc. The best examples of strong subject departments come from when teachers are talking about their approach to teaching, the students' approach to learning. And that's very much the culture we're trying to create in our school, where professional dialogues happen on a daily basis in the staff room around teaching and learning, as well as everything else that goes on in a staff room and giving about those students in 1G or trying to build those community of learners. And again, going back to our vision. And essentially, the school is a learning organisation. So that's the culture we try to create in our school. In trying to embed in our students a deeper understanding of learning, you often hear about these 21st century skills. And it's very easy to put them up, but how do you actually enact those 21st century skills? How do you make them real for students in the classroom? Some of that is coming through in the new junior cycle, and I know we shouldn't be mentioning it, so we call them 21st century skills. But these are skills that the students of the future are going to require. Very much, we're looking at what do we want our students to become in our school in the future, not what we want them to learn. What type of individuals do we want our students to be? And that's informing our curriculum and the way we approach teaching and learning in our school. We want our students to become global citizens. We want them to have the skills of collaboration and communication and problem solving and critical thinking. And the content that we cover with them is the vehicle we use to get there. These 2 pictures, and the reason I'm putting these up, it's not as simple as putting devices or putting the technology in the classroom. And you would have maybe seen these type of pictures before. One is from the 1920s. It's the schoolroom, it's the classroom, and they all have tablets in front of them. They're chalk tablets. The picture down the bottom is a picture of a 21st century classroom. They all have fabulous screens and monitors in front of them. This is from Moldova, an IT class in Moldova. But has teaching really changed? Has anything really changed? The digital textbook is being used. Teachers are celebrating, as I said, that fantastic digital turn on the on the digital page. That's nothing new. I have a nice Kindle at home. It looks fabulous. Flick the page over. It's really cool. But teaching and learning isn't changed. The teaching strategy, the teaching approach is not changing. So it's much, much more than just putting the devices and putting the technology into the classroom. So our approach, and going back to this, was looking at what do we want to achieve with our students first. We decided that as a staff, and then we started to look at what resources, what technologies would make life easier for us to achieve this. And it was that first initial conversations around our approach to teaching, our approach to learning, that informed our decisions around devices. I worked in school in Athenry for 5 years as principal, and we made the mistake of putting the devices in 5 years ago for first year, second year and third year into a school. And it was a mistake. I have no problem saying that. And just dropping them in. We had a budget left over that the ETB wanted to spend at the time. They were looking for a project, and this seemed like an easy project and solution at the time. It didn't work for the first few years. But it is starting to work now, where we've taken a step back and we've looked at what we are trying to achieve. So you need to put some thought into this before you go down the route of actually doing it. This again is just a tale of two classrooms, where the teacher knows everything compared to the teacher as the learning, where mistakes are frowned upon, where mistakes are seen as a route to learning, where the teacher questions or the kid questions, where the kid listens or the kid thinks, where students memorise facts and finish pages in the textbook or move on to solve problems and create their own textbook and create their own teaching and learning resources, where one size fits all to one size fits each student. I mean, we did start with the e-books, and we used them last year in the school because it was a bit much of an ask to ask my teachers to create their own resources in 1 year, just having started in the school. I'm not that intense. So they work together over the course of the year. And I have no hesitation in saying, and I get the phone calls the day after, the publishing companies are really taking the biscuit in terms of the pricing structures around digital textbooks and digital resources. I think it's disgraceful, so I wasn't going to buy into it any longer. Digital textbook is more or less the same price as a hard copy textbook. Not far off. The whole pricing structure needs a serious look at. And, you know, I ring a publishing company or I have conversations with publishing companies and they tell me they have the best teachers creating the digital textbooks. I think I have the best teachers in my school, as you do as well. The teachers in our school are excellent. They are brilliant. They have lots of resources. From my perspective, I think they don't have enough confidence in themselves. And maybe it's a problem with the profession. The teachers don't have enough confidence in their own ability and their own professionalism to believe that what they can produce themselves is of a standard that is really, really good. And I think as a leader, I have a role to play in terms of encouraging my staff and my school to believe in themselves and to believe in what they can produce, because they're every bit as good as those who produce the textbooks, because the textbooks aren't brilliant either. If you're serious about going down this route, there's a very short article journal to read. It's maybe 5 or 6 pages long, and it's really accessible. And it's called Alive in the Swamp, written by Michael Fullen. It's free, you just download it. And it really sets out a plan to implement digital technologies in an effective way in schools with the focus on pedagogy first and teaching and learning first. So if you are considering it, I would encourage you to read it and to really take on board. The teacher is seen as an activator, someone who isn't a facilitator. It's the person who encourages the student to learn themselves. And I mean, all of our teachers in our schools are activators. Assessment for learning. If you're engaged in assessment for learning, you're an activator. if there's reciprocal teaching going on in your school, if students are teaching students, if students are going off and researching and coming back and presenting to the class, you're an activator. So these aren't really difficult strategies or methodologies. Our teachers are doing this on a daily basis. And students are more engaged when they engage in those types of learning practices. But there are 4 things identified by Fullen in Alive in the Stromp and Stratosphere in terms of the successful integration of digital technologies into schools. They should be irresistibly engaging for students and teachers in terms of what you're going to do. We live at a digital age now where students are very comfortable in that environment. To use the terminology, they're digital natives. So it's not that we have to entertain our students in class with the same level of technology that they're engaged in, but teaching and learning does have to be interesting and engaging for students to motivate them. And I think technologies afford us that opportunity to make life a little bit easier. They must be elegantly easy and to adapt and to use. I've come across a lot of schools where teachers are using lots of different things in the school and students become confused. So one teacher is using this, and real pockets of good activity but lots of different activities in school. I think if you're going to start to roll digital technologies out in schools, that there should be an agreed approach and agreed technologies to use in the school so that the learning environment isn't exactly the same, because teachers are all different in their approaches, etc. But certainly the technologies that they're going to use should be the same technology. Ubiquitous access to technology 24/7. Students, that's the world they live in. Access technology all the time. And steeped in real-life problem solving in terms of the teaching and learning approach that you're going to use. And these are the 4 critical things to think about if you're going to introduce this approach to teaching in your school. So, in terms of innovative teaching practices in our school, we ditched the textbook and the e-book, develop a continuous collaborative process to assessment for learning. So these are some of the specific things that we looked at in our school. Flip, blend and hybrid your class. So we use a product called Microsoft OneNote. I'll speak about that in a minute. So the students have an opportunity to look at videos in maths and algebra before they come in and they're taught it. A 2-minute video that the teacher has created that's embedded in their OneNote. The evening before, the student that finds the concept difficult can pause it, can stop it, can sit back, can think, can reflect. And then when they come in to cover the topic the next day in class, the teacher will go through it. But students have a greater understanding of the topic that they're going to do in class. So there's a bit of pre-teaching, there's a bit of teaching on the day, and then there's a bit of revision in the evening if they want to look back over the video that they're going to use. But the technology we use, it's all together in the one place for the students. See the class as the co-teacher. When I talk to teachers about creating their own resource and textbook, if you're engaged in active learning methodologies and strategies, etc., why not let the students start to create some of the content as projects and let that form part of the digital resource that you're creating? Students love to see their resource in the school textbook in our school. That's the bit I produced, and everyone in first year is using it. That's a little video I did with my Surface, and Lara will speak about an exercise, say, on fold mountains, and did a little couple of bits of paper and explained it themselves, recorded the video, and it's embedded in our Teacher One book, so it's a student in the school. So they've contributed to the teaching and learning resource we use in our school, and they're excited by that, the students. And it's something we can change and edit and adapt depending on the class, depending on the year, as we progress through our school. Moving up the Bloom scale, so it's not all about recall. And sharing resources with other teachers and borrowing their ideas. So that happens in our school. We work with a number of other schools, and we're open to any school coming to our school and sitting down with our staff and having a chat, and we'll share ideas and we'll share resources. So we want to make learning a collaborative effort where students are engaged in their own learning. where they're responsible for gathering information, for evaluating the information they're gathering to go into digital resource. They edit it and they curate it. And I'm going to have to zip through some of these very quickly. From vision to practice. Promise of the cloud. So what do we use? We use Office 365 and SharePoint. This means that the resources that we create with the students, we have a master copy. If that master copy is changed, it automatically syncs on every student's device. So if one slight edit is made, that every student gets the benefit of that immediately. So you don't have to worry about book revisions year on year and updates. The students create that. Let me define the pedagogy. So the teacher defines what they want to do. We looked at different devices the whole way through, right through from the smartphone, right through to using a slate, tablet, PC with pen. And we went for a device that is ink capable. I know in my own learning, I'm used to writing things and jotting things down. If there's a diagram, I'll annotate around the diagram and I'll use that. Students learn better when they're able to do that. So why not have a device and a jotter? Research would show if they use a device that is ink capable, they learn better also. So we just combined the whole lot into the one. So greater pedagogical potential. And this isn't just me saying. There's a lot of research out there around it. The #1 best-selling book by, I think his first name, but Rome, in a number of years ago, was around problem solving. And the best way to solve problems is by jotting things down. We all know that if you're going to give directions, write it down in a bit of paper with a bit of diagram and give it to someone. They'll figure it out a lot quicker. So we wanted technologies that would allow us to do that. We all know that if you go into an English exam, you will tell students to underline, highlight, link paragraphs together. So they're used to writing and jotting down. So why not the device and the pad? You get lots of lovely apps out there that have lovely diagrams, etc., and all of that. But students invariably have to copy that diagram into their textbook or into their notebook. We wanted a device where we could take a diagram, insert it into OneNote, and where the students could annotate on that diagram. So it's all in one place centrally for them. So we went down the route of using Microsoft OneNote, which is a really, really effective tool to do all of that. It's one resource where you can incorporate a lot of different teaching and learning strategies into it. Annotation on digital text leads to greater depth of processing, and anyone who studies psychology, that elaborate rehearsal is the thing key to better memory. Okay? The ability to integrate meaning into existing knowledge. So where students can research, can reflect, can insert diagrams, can annotate on diagrams, that whole process of going through that process and learning, students learn more. What next? So where are we moving next in terms of what we're doing in our school? Our teachers have created all of their teaching and learning resources in Microsoft OneNote. We share it through SharePoint. All of our students have Surface Pro devices that are pen and stylus enabled, which are much easier to learn with. But I'm going to ask Lara just to do 2 quick minutes, because Lara is an A post holder in our school. Her responsibility is teaching and learning. That's her role. So she's going to speak about our next stages in terms of development.
Let's go forward. Okay, I'm going to go through this quite quickly again, because Alan spoke about how it came across from a management, how you, first of all, identify your vision within the school. So we started last year with the focus with the teacher-created content, where we were using Microsoft OneNote. It was definitely the move we wanted. It was a much more engaging presentation of education. Students could add to it and include work in it. It was tailor-fit, it was relevant. But then what we found out was that our primary role should be actually guiding the students through the pathway of discovery and learning to learn, and the secondary role was a presentation of content within that. So the essence of education, in its sense, has never changed. We're equipping students with the skills to successfully participate in life when they go on. But that society has changed. And now, with globalization opening up a world where students collaborate across countries and cultures and belief systems, now we need to equip students with the ability to search for information and evaluate it and present it and know how to get through that. So all our research has shown us why we need to go that way, and the technology is letting us do it. How can we do it? And that's what it's doing. We're identifying learning as their goal instead of striving for the completion of an assignment. And within that, we're making our life easier as teachers because we're enhancing motivation. We're taking away our role as policing, making sure homework is done and so on, by building that into the activity as such. So hands-on activity to demonstrate the learning. And what I want to talk about specifically is how that looks like in reality, how it looks like on the ground. And Gareth and I are going to speak much more about this in detail in the workshop and how we do each of those things. But basically, what we're looking at is fostering that curiosity within our students, and students coming into class with questions instead of going out of class with them. And we have all that technology available now. Using OneNote, it's a nice, safe environment where I can pool all my resources, lots of different media types. We have Office Mix now, that I know Garrett's going to speak about later, where we can annotate and speak over presentations. So now we're instilling motivation within our students because we're sending them home with work that they're going to do in the next class. So perhaps that's a question. It can be an outrageous statement. I can say to my students who are from Galway, I'm very proud of it, you would never have to leave Dublin if you lived there. It would be the best place to live. And as a geography teacher, I want them to think about that. I want them to argue it. I want them to agree with it and come into class with all of those questions. And we know curiosity feeds motivation and it feeds exploration. And as teachers, if we can embrace our new role as learners, it's a familiar sound, if we can embrace our role as explorers and learners and relinquish that control that we are the masters, we are the source of content. And what I spoke about with classroom management, it's so easy for me to go into a class now and know which student has their homework done, because I get into a class and I say, okay, you had that question for homework or you had to find a video source, get into groups, present your video source, and you're going to present it to the class in 3 minutes. I'm going to pick random people. During that time, I'm doing the role. What you mean you can't participate in the group? You have your homework done. You're going to have to work over there on your own. It's much more isolated. So the student is motivated to do the work. This like long-term gratification as such, where we're trying to instill in these students at 12 and 13, oh, do your questions for homework because when you're 18, you'll need them for your Leaving Cert. I don't want that. I want to know that if I don't have my work done, I can't participate in the next class. It's about connecting new information with knowledge that they already have and applying it. So what I spoke about earlier, searching, gathering, evaluating, presenting. So we cannot equip our students, try as we may now, with all of the information they're going to need. That society has moved, or we can't, because like you read the statistics now, a large percentage of our students that we teach today are going to work in professions that do not exist. And we can choose as teachers to be overwhelmed by it, or we can choose to be incredibly excited by it and think about how we can bring that into the classroom. Working collaboratively, so they're communicating and they're identifying strengths and problem solving, so that you have them within a group and they're starting to see who is the best person to present to a group, who is the best person to evaluate the information, and they're much quicker to evaluate each other's work. And if they're presenting work for their peers, they put a lot much more focus into it, because you as a teacher, you can mark it as you please, but I want to impress my peers. I want to work within them, within that group. So you have empowering the student now. So they're discovering information and piecing it together, constructing meaning themselves. So coming in with all these questions and putting it together as a group. So I might have a piece and you might have a piece, and it comes together like a jigsaw, and how we can use that going forward. So affording students the opportunity for exploration within a class, we're giving ourselves back the time as teachers by doing this. Creating a resource which is activity-based, the creation of activities that guide students through the learning, opposed to presenting content to them. Because we know, the research tells us, that by just presenting content, they will not go forward. We'll have our successful students that will do so, but the other students that we want to engage and to develop those kind of thoughts. Facilitating that atmosphere of questions. Why accept information? Why not question it? We're going to go into a lot of that in much more detail in the workshops, but that is something we're doing on the ground, and we can give actual examples of how to do that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Lara. So, I was told to finish up 5 minutes ago. I was going to leave with one final thing. I come from a kind of engineering background of a master's in manufacturing technology, and I pulled from one guy called Edward Demings, who would be the father of quality assurance in industry. Long-term commitment to new learning and new philosophy is required of any management that seeks transformation. The timid and the faint-hearted and the people that expect quick results are doomed to disappointment.